Could you give some specific techniques about dealing with greed and strong attachments, addictions?
Get what you can.
I've been doing that and it don't work.
Aha!
I'm tired of chasing my own tail.
The issue with all kinds of, it's the same really we were dealing with before, the question of addictions, is to quiet down enough so that you can begin to appreciate the mechanics of the process, so that you can see how it all works. Not necessarily see the source of it. I'm not talking about going back into what it caused it. I'm just saying look at it and see what it is. And see how, it's interesting, I will have an addiction, and then as my awareness gets stronger, which I'm cultivating through all my practices, as my awareness gets stronger, I notice that I still will respond to the desire and the pattern, but as I'm in it, instead of later on when I see that it didn't work or it didn't give me what I thought it would give me or something, and the despair and disillusion and that whole sequence, when I'm in it, I begin to feel its emptiness. Because the part of me is in it, still milking it for all I can, but there's another part of me that I've been cultivating that is just sitting with her and saying, lovely, isn't it? Or, yeah, great, awesome. And I've watched that awareness, as I said before, starting to short-circuit the whole process, getting back earlier and earlier until as that thing which awakens the greed starts in, it starts to thicken my consciousness. It's as if I'm falling out of grace into the desire system. The minute you identify with the desire system, which is really what starts the whole sequence of greed, the minute you identify with the desire, you will feel the finiteness of the game. You've just narrowed it down. You've just imprisoned yourself again. Identification with the desire is imprisoning. And yet you have desires. And the question is how you can be involved in life with desires and still not be attached to them. How you can be fully human with all of the stuff without the identification that grabs. What we're talking about is awareness. And awareness, at its freest sense, is this spacious, vast thing that includes everything. The minute it gets caught in a desire, it closes down into, I want that. And that's all you want, is I want that. And then all the rest of it is irrelevant. I want that. I mean, you watch a child, I want that, and if it can't have it, it starts to scream and cry. And the minute later, it doesn't want it anymore. And it's the same with us. I mean, we're doing the same thing. And I've gotten to the point where I see my desires. If I get them, fine. If I don't get them, fine. It's interesting. If I suffer, it's okay. That is as interesting as getting what I want. And I'm not a masochist about it either. I just begin to see that I have been at the mercy of those desire systems all my life. Of, are you getting what you need? I mean, and people come up and they say, I'm not getting what I need out of life. And I feel not badly that they're not getting what they need. I'm feeling badly that they're so caught in thinking that they need to get what they need. Because it's one level back. It's that identification where the problem is. So that I keep feeling that just keep cultivating the spaciousness of awareness and then watch how the awareness keeps getting trapped. And you can only do that when there's a little bit of quietness in you that can sort of sit and watch the thing as it's going down. And again and again, and I'm not the traditional kind of teacher which advocates renunciation of keeping away from the things. I'd say go out and be greedy. Just bring mindfulness to it. And that you'll watch after a while. See, that's why Maharaji is useful to me. Because Maharaji, as when I talk about my method being Guru Kripa, or grace of the Guru, it means that his consciousness is present with me all the time. If I go into the bathroom and masturbate, he's there saying, interesting. Getting a rush? Is this fun? Are you really having a good time? You know? If I do something for the 40th time that is gratifying but is basically an empty work of energy, he's just sitting there just with with love, total love. He's not judging me. He's not pushing me away. I can do that, but he's not. Having that consciousness around me all the time. I mean, I can feel that when there's an opportunity to have livelihood, that suddenly there's a chance to have more money in the scene. And I can watch that part of me that thinks I could get a little more money. In order to do that, I make another human being an object to get that more money from them, rather than what is a reasonable thing that allows us to stay us, which is called right livelihood. Right livelihood is us money. I mean, you remember that Uncle Henry story? Okay. See. Tough. How many don't know the Uncle Henry story? Oh, okay. Assuming 10% are lying. Some years ago, we put out a 6-record album called Love, Serve, Remember, with a beautiful brochure of pictures and artwork and a box, and the whole thing was sold mail order for $4.50. And it was really a beautiful production, and we put a lot of love and attention into it. It had chanting and questions and answers and meditations and the third patriarch of Zen and Gospel of John in it and stuff. It was wonderful. I loved it. And my father, who was a president of a railroad at that moment, took a look at it and he says, "Impressive, pretty good quality." I said, "Yeah." He said, $4.50, that's pretty cheap. I said, "Sure is." He says, couldn't you charge more? He says, "If you charged $10, would a lot fewer people buy it?" I said, "No." I said, $4.50 is what it cost us to produce, plus a reasonable return. He says, "But if you charge 10, would a lot fewer people buy it?" I said, "No, probably the same number." He says, "Well, I don't understand. Are you against capitalism?" And I said, "No." I tried to think of how I could explain that to him. I said, "Dad, you're a lawyer, and you've had a lot of cases, and I know that you take pretty good fees." "Damn right I do. I work hard." I said, "Yeah, you sure do." I said, "You remember last year you tried that case for Uncle Henry?" "Yeah." "You worked hard, didn't you?" "You damn right I worked hard." I said, "I bet you charged him a hell of a fee." He said, "Of course not, it's Uncle Henry." I said, "There's my problem. If you show me somebody that isn't Uncle Henry, I'll rip him off." That's the issue of right livelihood. That is the issue of right livelihood. That you charge what is enough so that you can look another human being in the eye as a member of the family and say, "That's a fair thing for you to be paying for this thing." And that's finally where you arrive at. And when I see myself not doing that, because but I make them into an object in order to do that, I watch the horrible beauty of nature unfolding. I see myself doing that, and I'm just quiet watching it, and then I watch the karmic effects of it, and after a while, as I'm starting to do it, it costs too much. It costs too much. There are many people that come up to me and say, "I love you so much, can we go to bed together?" And the funny line that always comes up in me, not always, but most of the time, is... The funny line that often comes up to me is, "We can't afford it." Because the karmic effects of it will be too great, because the amount of attachment inside of us, the way we're doing it. Can you hear the issue? Okay. Next question.